You're listening to The Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to The Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and it's that time again, bright and early on a Tuesday morning, coming off the heels of the Ravens taking down the Chargers in LA on Monday Night Football. It is time to rank all 32 teams from worst to first. Diving through the tier rankings, we'll start as we always do with the number one overall pick category and work our way all the way up to those Super Bowl contenders. I invite you all, comment down below. Let me hear your thoughts on this past weekend's games. How did your favorite team do? How did some of the other teams around the league do? How would you rank the teams, whether it's a whole entire 32-1 ranking, if it's just your top 3, 5, 10? Let me hear from you all. Let me know what I'm getting right. What am I getting wrong? Fire away. That being said, we're going to go ahead, turn the page. You're staring at last week's rankings right now. We will flip it over, moving into week number 13 now, beginning with that number one overall category. At the very bottom of the league here to kick things off, at 32, the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously not having a game this past week. They are my definitive worst team at this current moment here, followed up by the Giants at 31, the Raiders at 30, the Patriots dropping down to 29 this week, Browns sitting at 28, and then the Tennessee Titans sitting at 27. So, the Jacksonville Jaguars, like I said, did not play this past weekend. Nothing to really say about them. If you're interested in why I have them where I have them right now, I think it's pretty obvious just considering the current state of the Jaguars right now and their current situation, but also my full explanation is in last week's video. Now, the Giants sitting at 2-9, right at 31 here. There is a lot more going on as far as issues are concerned with the New York Giants than just Daniel Jones. This team, in my opinion, desperately needs a reset, and I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen, even if it's just Brian Daboll or somebody, get fired to this point in the season with where we are right now. Currently, Malik Neighbors has had some pretty pointed things to say about the offensive play calling, whether he's saying it without saying it or not, which he was definitely saying it without saying it when he references not receiving a single target before you're down 30 points. The fact that Daboll even has to come out and bring that up and let everyone know that they are going to make it a point to get Malik Neighbors, of all people, the one playmaker you have on offense, the football more often going forward, it sums up the current state of the Giants, in my opinion. The Raiders at number 30 here, with no ability to run. Gardner Minshew now done for the season, relying on either Desmond Ridder or Aiden O'Connell if he is healthy enough. This is a team that is currently in a prime situation to potentially be picking number one overall. They do have a defense right now that is bending for dear life and unfortunately breaking in some circumstances. But right now, for me, the O-line, you have no running game, no quarterback. At least you have a guy like Jacoby Myers or maybe some young talented tight ends. Brock Bowers has obviously been really good for you this year, but there's a whole lot not really positive about where the Raiders currently are at this moment here. I'm looking forward to seeing who they're taking in the draft. I'm assuming it's going to be a quarterback, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for this team, though. The Patriots at number 29 here. The final score of the game made it look a lot closer than it actually was. 34-15 is honestly generous for where this game actually was. The Patriots were outclassed in just about every manner possible, whether it was offensively, defensively, coaching, playmaking, personnel-wise, you name it, and the Patriots were outclassed in some way or another. Defense the last couple of weeks, because everyone's been harping on how bad this offense is in New England, has honestly not been great either, as you're now looking at 62 points allowed in nearly 800 total yards of offense between these last couple of games. It feels like the Patriots as a whole are now starting to fall apart, and I'm not on the fire Gerard Mayo bandwagon. I think you got to give a rookie head coach at least a whole season and then at least some of the second season to see where things really are going right now, or where this team is going, I guess, down the road. But for me, I can see where some of those people are coming from, because the Patriots defense was a better unit last year. You brought back a lot of the same guys, And, you have a franchise quarterback now. Everyone seems to be really high on Drake May. This team should be finishing this season with more wins than they did last year, all things considered. And I don't even know if that's possible right now. The Browns at number 28, sitting at 3-8 with their massive upset win on Thursday Night Football in what has been dubbed the Snow Globe game over the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 turnovers in the second half nearly cost them this one here, but they got the job done, and I've got to tip my cap to that. Nick Chubb had a couple of big touchdowns in the game here close to the goal line. Even if this season is lost for the Browns, and I would definitely say that is the case, you have someone in Jameis Winston who is going to literally fight to the very finish line for you, and you do still have guys on that roster that want to prove themselves in what is a lost season. And for them to come out and play the Steelers the way they did and come up as big as they did, I tip my cap to that effort here, because this is a team that is well on the fast track of picking potentially somewhere within the top 5, if not like right outside in the top 8. And to see them fighting and playing spoiler to a division rival at this point in the season is always a good time, in my opinion. And then at 27, to round out the number 1 overall pick group, we have the Tennessee Titans here sitting at 3-8 as well. Despite a Will Levis pick 6 in some of the just antics of trying to give the football away that you seem to get with Will Levis each and every single week, the Titans pulling off one of the crazier upsets of the season. And I've got to say, as somebody who grew up rooting for an AFC South team in myself with the Colts, I'm not really surprised that something like this happened here, because the Texans have shown some vulnerabilities over the last few weeks here, but also just because AFC South football is one of those divisions where the best team in the division typically, at least in like the post-Peyton Manning era, I should throw on there, typically plays down to whoever it is they're playing. And I feel like that's rung true for just about every single divisional leader ever since Peyton Manning left the AFC South. So that's kind of been where the AFC South is. So to see the Texans come in, struggle offensively against the Titans defense that is honestly proving its worth here and kind of making me eat a bowl of my words every single week, because I did kind of call them out for not being I guess I could say I called them out for kind of being suspect and not really believing in the numbers that they were putting up every single week. But they're a pretty damn good unit, and it's time for me to really give them some respect, because I mean what they're doing, especially on the defensive front there, Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, and then Harold Landry III, like those guys up front are dominating offensive lines, winning the battle in the trenches each and every single week. They couldn't pass protect for the life of them in this game here, but they opened things up for Tony Pollard, who hit nearly 120 yards on the ground. It was an impressive performance, to say the least. So again, tip my cap to that one. Allow you to sit at the top of the bottom of the barrel in the NFL. The struggle bus here getting a little bit bigger as we got a new team riding along the way. At number 26, we have the Jets, who obviously did not play this week. The Saints at 25, who again did not play this week. We're looking at the Panthers sitting at 3-8 with a narrow loss to the Chiefs. We got the Bears at 4-7, the Cowboys at 22 at 4-7 as well, Colts at 21 at 5-7, and then the Bengals rounding out the group at 4-7 at number 20 as well. So the Jets and Saints, nothing to say about them. They are staying put where they are, having not participated this week. But the Panthers, I have got to give this team some credit for hanging around. The pass rush, getting to Patrick Mahomes 5 times in this game and 3 times late in the game, where it helped this team creep its way back in to ultimately tying up this matchup. This was a game that should not have been this close, as the Chiefs were heavily favored here, double-digit favorites, where I assumed that the Chiefs were probably going to win by at least a minimum of 10 here. But we're seeing positive things from Bryce Young since he's been benched. We've also seen, guys like Chuba Hubbard who have looked really good for this offense, Xavier Leggett. There's a lot to like about what they're doing right now. There's flaws, don't get me wrong, but for this Panthers team to come in and hang around the way they did against the Chiefs, I don't care whether it's a home game, an away game, or if it's a neutral football field, to go down by 3 in the waning seconds of a matchup against the defending Super Bowl champions where nobody had you even hanging around, I tip my cap to that. I respect the effort from Carolina. The Bears at 23. Bears fans, I hurt for you. I truly do, because it's not only is it loss after loss, but it feels like heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss, this time in overtime to a field goal. I feel like I'm kind of riding with Bears fans right now because I am now, I know people that are Bears fans, and this is kind of new to me, but I feel for you, Chicago. I really do. You guys deserve better, and you women as well. You all deserve better. It's just one of those things where I genuinely feel for the situation because Caleb Williams actually had a pretty strong performance overall, all things considered. I would say the O-line held up against Minnesota better than I would have expected as well. There were some situations where Caleb was running for dear life in some instances, but for this game to have gone the way it did, and I even had someone mention in the comments going through my predictions video, the NFC North is one of those divisions where like records kind of go out the window, and I definitely agree with that statement. This was a prime example of that, as we've seen how close some of these NFC North matches have been this year. I feel for Chicago right now because every single loss feels like it's heartbreaking in one way or another. They cannot catch a break in Chicago right now. The Cowboys at 22 at 4-7, everyone counting you out. You proved everyone wrong. Big victory against the Commanders team that a lot of people, basically considered a shoo-in for the playoffs. And while they still are a playoff team at this current moment here, losing a game like this and falling 3 straight now is not the trajectory that the playoff hopeful Commanders should be in right now, especially a Dallas Cowboys team that is down and out the way they are with the injuries they're dealing with. No, obviously, Dak Prescott. And this was a performance I was not expecting. I myself even wrote off the Cowboys coming into this game here. And I do have to give an extra special shout out because some of the roots of this channel belong to the USFL and always will. But 2022 USFL MVP Kevontae Turpin with the 99-yard return for 6. That spin move, video game-esque. That is the type of spin move that has been in Madden in years past where everyone goes, that's so fake. The spin move in real life never looks like that. And there's probably a Madden developer somewhere beating their chest going, see, it is real. So I tip my cap to Kevontae Turpin on that play because that was absolutely insane. The ending of that game as a whole was absolutely insane. The return on the onside kick is not something I think I have personally ever seen. I don't know how many onside kick returns there's ever really been in the NFL history. I can't imagine there's a lot, but that was a crazy ending to this game. And just again, shout out to the Cowboys as everyone's doubting you and counting you out here. The Colts at 21. This team, the team I grew up rooting for, is exactly what I suspected them to be. I did not let myself get caught up in the hype of the win over the Jets last week and what was an awesome performance. And honestly, this game from the Colts only made me feel more strong and firm about what I think about the Jets right now as well, after watching them let the Colts offense look the way it did last week, and then to get the reality check of this is what the Colts really look like against a competent football team. Like this loss by the Colts honestly says a lot more about where the Jets currently are as an organization, but not good. Not good at all. They capitalized on a down-and-out Jets team last week, and I genuinely do not know if the Colts have what it takes to beat the Patriots right now. And we've already talked about the Patriots and what I think about them. And I mean, I have the Colts ranked somewhat significantly higher. What is this, 8 spots higher than where I have the Patriots? Where do I have them at 29? Yeah, so 8 spots higher than I have the Patriots. But I genuinely do not know if this team can actually take down the Patriots in the current state they're in offensively. It is a mess, and I can't get behind it. The Bengals at 20 round out the category. They actually had a successful bye week themselves. They did bump up here because I dropped the Colts down a couple of spots. So hats off to Cincinnati. Successful bye week for you. Now, moving into the Jeff Fisher category, though, the one that everyone loves, the teams that are right in the middle, maybe just outside the playoffs, looking in, somewhere within that ballpark. The Rams at number 19, sitting at 5-6, getting ultimately bounced by the Philadelphia Eagles at home on Sunday Night Football. We have the Dolphins at 18, the 49ers at 17, Buccaneers at 16, and then the Cardinals rounding out the group at number 15, getting bumped out of the playoff hopefuls with a loss to the Seahawks. Now, the Rams never really standing a chance in this Sunday night football game here. For me, it really is about the offensive line and the issues that they've been dealing with. Even with guys coming back in the last couple of weeks to help refortify that O-line, it just feels like they are not gelling. And they went up against a Philadelphia defensive front that is just, it's surging right now. From the D-line to the linebackers, they are really, really hot at this current moment. And we've seen the struggles of this Rams O-line now through a couple of weeks, even with guys like Jonah Jackson coming back and Steve Avila coming back. So, I mean, there is definitely it's a work in progress over there. And I think that's really where this team ultimately lost. But also, you kind of saw the youth and inexperience of the defense as well coming into play here, where you're going up against an offense that has one of the best O-lines in the NFL. On top of that, you have some of the best skill players in the NFL, whether it's the wide receiver room, whether it's Saquon Barkley out of the running back, or if you look at the tight end room as well, Dallas Goedert, some pretty talented guys over there all over the Philadelphia offense. You kind of got that on full display. But again, it was really Saquon Barkley that was the undoing of this team here as he set out for a career game. So not much you can do. You're 5-6 right now, basically where I've kind of thought of the Rams over the last few weeks, especially after watching them drop that game to the Dolphins a few weeks ago. This is kind of, and fitting, it's the Rams of all teams that I think are pretty much your definitive Jeff Fisher team right now. The Dolphins at number 18, right above them at 5-6. Big win for them, much needed one as they continue to try to keep their playoff hopes alive. They're playing catch up to the Broncos, Chargers, and Ravens right now, trying to see if they can make some ground. Obviously, the Ravens a bit far away for them here, but the Ravens aren't division leaders, oddly enough. The Steelers are ahead of them. But of course, you have the Broncos and Chargers right now. Chargers now sitting at 7-4, Broncos at 7-5. You're trying to make up some ground. So you come into a game like this where your offense, since Tua has returned, is averaging about 30 points per game right now. The defense in that same amount of, in the last 3 games, 11 sacks altogether. In that same span, your defense allowing only about 16 points per game as well. The offense is clicking. The defense is actually putting it together as well, and I think they're honestly just benefiting from the fact that the offense isn't going 3 and out every other drive or just every drive in general. So the Dolphins are surging at the right time here. Only 6 losses on the season. They can honestly afford maybe one more loss, but they do have to kind of win out at this point here. Like, again, you have some wiggle room because what are the odds that Denver doesn't drop another game or 2 as high as I am on them right now? I mean, there's a good chance that they can maybe drop 1 or 2. Same with the Chargers as well. So there is a path to success here, but a lot of winning is necessary. But going in and bouncing a team like the Patriots is exactly the type of win you need to have to keep you hot, keep you feeling good as you work through the stretch run of the season here. 49ers at 17, no Brock Purdy, no Trent Williams, no Nick Bosa. Cannot really say I'm surprised that this was the end result of this football game. San Fran in some serious trouble right now. I don't really have a lot to say, though. I mean, you're missing so many key guys to this team, whether it's on offense and defense right now. I'm not too surprised that they got blown out the way they did. I was on the fence about what I thought was going to happen in the game when I made my prediction, just because I didn't know who was going to be in there and who was not going to be in there. And I let my final score be nice and close just because I was so unsure of who was actually playing or not. But if you would have told me that Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, and Nick Bosa were guaranteed not to play when I made my pick for that game, I would have just that probably would have been my end result score, or something in that ballpark, where they're just kind of getting blown out with how many guys are missing there. So not super surprised, but definitely in some trouble right now with San Francisco. Buccaneers at 5-6. You're on your bye last week. You watch Atlanta completely get dog walked by Denver. Excuse me. And then from there, you come in and you are the one doing the dog walking, this time against the New York Giants, to help close that gap. The Buccaneers needed that double whammy of a Falcons loss last week and a win for their end this week as well to keep their playoff hopes of potentially stealing away the NFC South from Atlanta alive. Baker Mayfield has very quickly become one of my favorite quarterbacks this season. I've always been high on Baker, even during the tail end of what was a messy departure from Cleveland. I've always been high on him. I've always believed in him as a franchise guy, and I'm glad he's getting this second act with Tampa Bay. Him doing the Tommy DeVito celebration has got to be one of the and as aggressively as he did, has got to be one of the crazier things I have ever seen as a celebration of football, just because the aggressiveness and just the so in your face, like it's obvious what I'm doing here, and then like the smug press conference afterwards. I love it. It's like the cocky guy you love to hate, but if you can appreciate who he is, he reminds me of kind of like a wrestling character where he's like the really cool heel tweener guy. If you're a wrestling fan, I think you kind of know what I'm talking about. That's kind of how I look at Baker Mayfield, and it makes it very fun and entertaining to watch the Buccaneers. So hats off to them. I can't believe that we didn't see the Giants coaching staff get fired basically on the spot as he was hitting that celebration, because that's downright embarrassing if you're on the other end of that. So it is what it is, but Buccaneers, man, you have a shot. Defense looked pretty good as well in this game here, just completely dominating against the New York Giants. The Bucs are alive, and there is a shot. They need a few things to break their way, but that NFC South very much in reach. And then the Cardinals rounding out the Jeff Fisher category at number 15 at 6-5. 4-game winning streak, snapping. You struggled in pass protection. You couldn't open up running lanes. The O-line just had a really tough game altogether. 7 drives going for no more than 6 plays in this game here. You had the missed field goal at the end of the game, which was kind of like the icing on the offensive struggles cake, if you will. I got to give a lot of credit to the defense, because with all the struggles your offense was having, that's very easily a game that you could just kind of at some point start to, the bend and finally break and then mail it in type deal. You're running out of gas. You've been on the field for maybe far too long. Thankfully, the defense played really tight as well in that game, so it's not a complete loss here, but this was one where if you wanted to maintain your dominance in the NFC West, which has been a very wide-open division for anyone to kind of grab a hold of, and nobody seems to be able to just completely grab a hold of it yet. I thought maybe the Cardinals were going to be the team to do it finally, but 2 6-5 teams, 2 5-6 teams, still very much wide open in that division here, and the Cardinals only complicated it further with a loss to the Seahawks. Now, moving into the playoff hopefuls, as I remind everyone that is always here and or letting the new people that are here know, playoff hopefuls and Super Bowl contenders combined must have a division winner from every single division. You have to have 7 AFC teams, 7 NFC teams altogether. So we're including wildcard potentials for both conferences as well. That being said, at number 14, Atlanta Falcons, who did not play this week, obviously. Seahawks at number 13, Chargers at 12, the Broncos are at 11, Texans at 10, Commanders at 9, Vikings at 8, Packers at 7, and then the Steelers dropping out of the Super Bowl contenders category following their loss to the Browns this week. We'll get into that in a second. With that being said, though, at number 14, like I said, the Falcons, they are the division leader right now. They're hanging on by a thread here. Tampa Bay is chomping at their heels to try and usurp them. The good thing for Atlanta, though, they've got some key victories over Tampa Bay, much needed. So keep that in mind as they sit ahead here at 6-5. The Seahawks themselves leapfrogging into the playoff hopefuls right now, and they actually have a win over Atlanta right now, which was something I considered as well and why I decided to slot them ahead as they move their way in. Mike McDonald has to be thrilled with the way this game played out. This was a defensive win through and through, and this is a defense that has been hurt, they've been battered, they've been bruised, and they just cannot seem to shake the injury bug. And they've consistently been missing guys all season long here. But to come in, you shut down a very strong rushing attack in Arizona. And this defense has not been great against the run basically all season. Between that, I mean, you shut down Marvin Harrison Jr., you shut down Kyler Murray, you didn't really let him escape the pocket too much and get away from you. I mean, you had a Kobe Bryant pick 6. I mean, this was a really good game. You're like one black mark on the performance is Trey McBride had like 130 yards or something like that. But I mean, aside from that, this was one of the most complete defensive performances that Seattle has put together this year. And I'm sure Mike McDonald, being the defensive-minded head coach that he is, could not be more thrilled with the way his defense looked in this game. Chargers at 12. This was tough. Losing J.K. Dobbins right before the half is definitely a killer. He was honestly having a pretty solid game. 6 carries, 40 yards, average was nice and high. He looked pretty good to that point. I think that really hurt the offense, kind of killed the ground attack, and from there it just kind of became the Justin Herbert show, which is, I mean, by no means not like the worst thing in the world, but for the way the Chargers play and for the way that they've won games, ball control is key for them, and being able to keep the offense balanced when necessary is huge, and it felt like you really had to start relying on Justin Herbert. Quentin Johnston, we've got to talk about according to PFF, 3 drops he had. I thought there may have been 4, but maybe I'm just remembering somebody else dropping the ball. But yeah, 3 drops on the evening. Not a great look in some key situations too, where the crowd was just raining boos on him. The run defense was something that we talked about in the predictions and previews. The run defense statistically coming into this game, numbers-wise, pretty good. I believe like somewhere in the top 10 coming into the game. Maybe they were at number 10 or like number 11, but somewhere like in the upper third of the NFL. My concern was, though, that they had not seen a ton of rushing attempts in total this year, and that might have been why the numbers were so low. They ranked, going into the game, 4th lowest in the NFL in rushing attempts seen as a defense. Their average was about 4.7 yards per attempt allowed, and then you go through this game here, you allow over 6 yards per attempt, you see the ball come at you 35 times on the ground, and you allow over 200 yards. I don't want to say the run defense got exposed, but if you want to say that, I mean, I get it. So, tough night for the Chargers. Final score, honestly, one of those kind of made the game look a little bit closer than it actually was as well. Like, obviously you're in position to, onside kick and maybe have a shot there, but if not for some bad pass interference calls, or I don't want to say calls, but just some bad pass interference by the Ravens defense, this game ends up being a little bit closer than I think it honestly should have final score-wise. The Broncos right above them, making the jump here at number 11, a team that we have been giving a lot of love to the last few weeks, honestly, more than the last few weeks. I would say for the last month or so here. I've had the Broncos up for quite some time now, probably higher than a lot of other people have up until this point, and it feels like I've been seeing people start to catch up and catch on to it. This defense, championship level. They are good. I cannot stress enough the importance of what a excellent pass rush, and not only that, but a deep pass rush can do for you. You finish a game with 28 total pressures with 5 sacks. Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Jonah Ellis, John Franklin Myers. I mean, you have just like a litany of guys that you can send and go after the quarterback and have either found success elsewhere in the league before coming over here, are homegrown talent, or just guys that are young and up and coming like Jonah Ellis. This is one of the more fearsome group of guys that you need to look out for and you need to respect. And it's making things very easy for the offensive side, being led by a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, who, as we've talked about each and every single week, if he stays comfortable in the pocket, he can play really well. He had another 273 yards in this game, couple of touchdowns. As long as he's comfortable, he's going to lead the offense to points, and the defense continues to shut teams down week in and week out, dominating some weeks, and if it's not dominating, it's a very strong performance at the very least. I'm so impressed with where Denver is right now because this is not where Denver was supposed to be. Overachieving, absolutely, but they are in the thick of things. This team is a blocked field goal away from sitting at maybe 8-4 and really being in the discussion of like one of those top upper echelon playoff teams. Right above them at number 10 is the Texans sitting at 7-5, and honestly, I was tempted to drop them even lower, and there's a good chance that maybe the Texans aren't as good as Denver as things currently stand right now, because offensive line issues are really starting to look like a problem in my eyes, and maybe I'm sure some other people's as well. But I mean, you look at the 16 pressures and the 4 sacks allowed, could not get any push in the run game either. Joe Mixon, who's been tearing up defenses this year, only 22 yards on the ground for him. CJ Stroud obviously looking uncomfortable, making some bad throws. He had a couple of interceptions. You had the missed field goal in the final 2 minutes of the game that ultimately cost you in this as well. And the defense, it had a really good game. 8 sacks, 18 pressures, pick 6. I mean, the defense is a big reason as to why this game was at least as close as it was in the tail end of the match. I'm really worried about the trajectory of the Texans right now, because for me, I thought, okay, yeah, O-line issues are kind of popping up, but I was like, Nico Collins needs to get back. Now he's back. He had a really good performance, nearly had 100 yards in the game, but there's clearly some other issues going on right now. And again, I've given the Titans some flack in the past about how I didn't necessarily believe in their defense to quite the level that they were showing on the stat sheet. But after seeing what they did to Houston in this game here, my concerns have only risen for Houston, but I've also gained a lot of respect for what Tennessee's doing over there. Commanders at number 9, dropping down here after another loss. They've lost 3 games in a row here. And honestly, again, another team you could argue maybe deserves to be lower than a team like the Broncos, who are hot and heavy right now. That being said, you've got to win that game against Dallas. There is no, especially at home too, like no reason you should be losing that football game. Dropping the ball on this one, from the 3 turnovers to going 4-12 on third down, just extremely sloppy performance. The first half was a bit of an offensive nightmare for you, and it wasn't great for Dallas either. So like that was your opportunity to really jump out and get ahead, but it makes sense that Dallas is having the bad game considering where they currently are offensively. You can't run the football, backup quarterbacks playing right now, offensive line's necessarily not the greatest in the greatest state at this current moment here. So I mean, this is a game you're supposed to win. And I had a lot of hesitation about putting the Commanders inside the Super Bowl contenders category, and they sat around that spot right outside looking in for quite some time. And now with 3 straight losses, kind of in a little bit of a tailspin right now, I feel a little bit vindicated for choosing not to do so and keeping them out as long as I did and just having them on the outside looking in. At number 8, the Minnesota Vikings, and this is one I'm sure I'm going to hear it from because I've been hearing it all season long, and I get it. It's fine. If you think that the Vikings should be higher, Vikings fans, I get it. This is more just a preference thing than anything else. I don't hate the Vikings, and I feel like I need to reiterate that every week because there are some people that seem to think I do. I have no issue with Minnesota. I really like Brian Flores. I really like Kevin O'Connell. I really like Justin Jefferson. I really like Jordan Addison. I really like TJ Hawkinson. I'm like a bit like Christian Darrisaw. I envy as a Colts fan because the draft that he was coming out, he was someone I wanted Indianapolis to get, and I love what the defense is doing over there, and I'm so impressed with it because it was kind of a group I thought I was going to write off, and I did kind of write off coming into the season, and they've overly impressed me in a lot of different ways, but there are some flaws. They have gotten beat by some quarterbacks, and Caleb Williams did kind of go for, north of 300 and something yards this past week, so like there are some deficiencies in that defense that can be beat, and then on top of that, I'm not in on the Sam Darnold train. I'm not. And that's basically where I stand on that. So if you hate me, I'm sorry. I don't want to give them too much flack for having the tight game against the Bears like we talked about. It's the North divisions both. It's AFC. I say it a lot about the AFC, but it rings true for the NFC too. I think I should reiterate that as well. Those games, records kind of go out the window and anything can happen. So I try not to hold losses to like the lesser of the 2 teams in those games, more so than like other losses to other lesser teams if you're a better team, just because the North divisions, those games are just, they're wild. They're typically like knockout fights. The haymakers are being thrown. It's cold weather. It's gritty football. So I try not to hold as much weight in those type of upset losses or in like close games where you probably should have beat the Bears by more and not be hanging the way you did, like over the edge. But for me, having them at number 8 really just comes down to my belief in the teams in front of them more than anything else. If that's like the best way I could put it. And if you can't accept that, I'm sorry. The Packers at number 7, down and out 49ers team coming into Lambeau. You basically should be smacking them around. You did smack them around, and you did what you should do. That's kind of my takeaway from that game for Green Bay here. You had 3 touchdowns by Josh Jacobs. That was really fun to watch. Jordan Love finally snapping his interception streak that he'd been dealing with all season long, and I think technically extended into the final game of last season as well, because I think the streak was like 1 game longer than this season was. So there's that as well. Defense allowed only 10 points. This was the type of game you were supposed to have with San Francisco coming in the state that they were in. Glad to see they got it done. The Steelers at number 6, in all caps here in my notes, a damn shame. This is a game, again, you shouldn't be losing, but those northern divisions are just, they're always like this. And especially with maybe some of the weather going on, and even prior to the weather, my biggest gripe was just some of the more over-aggressive play calling that we got before the snow even started to come down really bad. But like, you look at just the 8 drives before this offense finally found the end zone. You go missed field goal, unfortunate. Turnover on downs, second drive of the game, like why? And then from there, kick a field goal, Steelers typical, fumble, then from there, sack at the end of the half, then coming out, you have yourself a turnover on downs again, field goal before finally getting in for the touchdown. Defense was making some massive plays, and honestly, you have to wonder if a guy like TJ Watt missing from that matchup is like the difference maker between this game being a win or a loss, which is kind of the trouble you were having offensively. But man, this is a shame, because the Steelers dropping this game, and again, I know I just said I try not to hold too much weight when it comes to these North Division matchups and like the better team losing to the lesser team, because that's just how those divisions are. But if you're a Super Bowl contender, in my eyes, your offensive performance does not go missed field goal, turnover on downs, field goal, fumble, sacked at the end to end the half, turnover on downs, field goal before finally getting in for the touchdown. I'm still super high on the defense over there in Pittsburgh, and maybe if TJ Watt plays, we're talking a different outcome, but we need to see some more from that offense in Pittsburgh. So for right now, just on the outside looking in, that defense is championship level, but there are some concerns I have about the offense. And then finally, to wrap it up, the top 5 teams in the NFL, the last of the remaining. At number 5, we're looking at the 7-4 Baltimore Ravens. At number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs, who have dropped another spot here. The Eagles sit at number 3 at 9-2. Bills obviously not playing this week at 9-2. And then at number 1, the Detroit Lions holding steady at the top of the mountain here. The Ravens, another game, another 200-yard performance on the ground. Defensive front, absolute nightmare for the Chargers to deal with. You had 4 sacks, the 6 tackles for loss, some 7 quarterback hits. It was a really strong performance to hold Justin Herbert in check and to ultimately shut things down. Once J.K. Dobbins was, taken out for the remainder of the game, they kind of started to tee off, because they knew it was basically Justin Herbert's show the rest of the way, because as much as I like Gus Edwards and some of the other guys they have, they're like Kamani Vidal in the backfield, J.K. Dobbins is kind of the heart and soul of that running game over there in L.A. So unfortunate performance there. And then one other thing I want to note here, because this is one of those like unsung heroes of a team that you probably don't hear about if you're not a fan of that football team. Kyle Van Noy, 2014 draft class, 10 years into his career, 11 years into his career, I guess. Do you count? I don't know. I don't know what the math is on that. That's why I don't do math. Kyle Van Noy, talk about an awesome addition for this defense. One that I remember hearing that signing and seeing some of the reaction and people going, how is this like a replacement for some of the things we've lost this offseason kind of deal? And he has just been so good, where he's sitting on 7 or 8 sacks this season, just low-key having a really good season, closing in on double-digit sacks. And he's been in the league now for 10, 11 years. And this was not a signing that blew the doors off of anyone when they saw it happen, but just one of those low-key things where you bring that guy in and he's going to be uber productive for you. That's such a Ravens signing, and for it to work out as well as it did, very Ravens-esque as well. The Chiefs at number 4, sitting at 10-1, way too close for comfort. Way too close. Offense went 5 straight scoring drives to get the game going, and then in that second half, just for whatever reason, fell completely flat, could not protect Patrick Mahomes, could not get a play in the way they needed to, and it led to Carolina just slowly late in that game creeping their way back in to the point where they're tying it up 27-27, and it comes down to a final second field goal. Whoever the backup is over there, I forget what his name is. That's how tuned I am, in tune to the kickers are in KC right now. But not Harrison Butker, whoever the backup is, which is even scarier, all things considered here. I'm hoping that this is just one of those looking ahead type of situations for the Chiefs, but you should not be winning by 3 in the waning seconds of a game against Carolina. And we kind of hit on it when we were talking about Carolina earlier. That's just not a great look. A little bit scary in my opinion. They're still the reigning defending champions. I still firmly believe in them, and I'm probably picking them on a neutral football field against basically anyone in the league, the Lions included. But the way they're playing right now in comparison to some of the other teams in front of them, I like them at 4. The Eagles at number 3, obviously Saquon Barkley, we mentioned this one talking about the Rams here, 302 yards, 255 of those yards being rushing. There is a case to be made right now for Saquon Barkley to be MVP. In my opinion, just the way he's playing in this current state and where the Eagles are with him on the football field, he is the most valuable player to a football team right now, because I can't imagine where this Eagles team is after that 2-2 start if he's not playing for them the way he is week in and week out, and how monumental he is for this team to be in the position that they are in right now. 302 yards from scrimmage does not happen often, or if at all, very rarely. So for that, and it to be coming from a running back who is supposed to be a dime a dozen type deal, Saquon Barkley is special, and he is taking things over in there. And I know he's benefiting from the most talented team he could possibly have around him, but you line up other talented guys in certain situations with other talent around them, and they don't quite show up the way Saquon Barkley is right now. This is a dream situation for him, and he is taking it, and dad joke to the max here, but he's absolutely running with the opportunity here. So I tip my cap to Barkley because that was one hell of a performance. And then on the flip side of things, the defense and we've talked about this already, between Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell just being the life young blood that this defense so sorely needed going into the offseason, really rounding into being very impressive guys. Quinion Mitchell has a very strong case for Defensive Rookie of the Year at this point here. And the trenches, my God, that defensive front is so good now. And, people were talking about, Howie Roseman's just drafting the Georgia guys, the big name school guys, and blah, blah, blah. Well, those big name guys from those big name schools are really turning into like their pro level performances now. And 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. They hit Matthew Stafford 11 times. It sucks that Brandon Graham is done for the season with his torn tricep, but I'm not that worried considering just how stacked they currently are up in the defensive front there. Definitely not ideal, but my God, is this group good. The Bills at number 2 didn't play this week. In my opinion right now, they have played the best football in the AFC, so we'll keep them at number 2. If you want to hear a little bit more about that, feel free to check out last week's explanation. And then the Lions at 10-1 with 12 points allowed in the last 2 weeks, with a plus 177 point differential, which is the best in the league by 71. They will run it down your throat. They will dice you up throwing the football with Jared Goff's arm. They won't let you do a meaningful thing of offense until it's like 35-7 maybe, and then you might start getting some garbage time points late in the game. The Lions are playing a different style of football right now. I'm a big fan. I know Lions fans hated me for quite some time having Kansas City in front of them for as long as I did. Lions fans, I see you. I've heard you. I respect what's going on over there. In my opinion, the way this play is going down right now in Detroit, best football team in the NFL. Those are my power rankings coming out of Week 12, going into Week 13. Fire away in the comment section down below. Let me hear from you all. But as always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.